In many countries, freedoms simply do not exist, or certain freedoms do not exist. Now, I guess recently there has been a lot of talk out there about the Republican Party and what it needs to do to change its outlook. And, improvement is always a good thing. I wonder if there is both sides that want improvement. So I'm going to play Republicans, This Is Your Wake Up Call. I played it yesterday on my Martin Luther King show, or MLK show, Stoic Calm. And I'm going to try to be as more calm than I was that day, even though this is not a Stoic Calm show. I just want to go out and play things, and just we'll continue from there. So I'm just going to play this video, and I'm going to stop and go as we go along. This man is a very well-spoken person, but is this well-spoken man speaking the truth? Well, that is for you to decide, and this is just my perspective on transparency and merit. Thank you.
This is a wake-up call for Republicans. America elected Joe Biden by over 7 million votes, and you're confused because you didn't see us flock to his rallies and cheer his smackdowns like we were at a pro wrestling event during a global pandemic. We don't wear matching hats or have no more malarkey flags waving from the backs of our trucks. Do you know why? Because Biden is not our tribal warlord. We believe the job of a US president is to represent more than one interest group.
I guess that would be true. Okay, let's continue. Now, if he's talking about the security of our election and the like, have Democrats never questioned that? Anyway, let's continue.
That's why 81 million of us turned out to stop a narcissistic personality cult that embodies all 7 of the deadly sins, most of all pride.
So there aren't Democratic groups that have pride or ego victimhood. That doesn't happen. There aren't crackpots within the Democratic Party. Let's continue.
Which you've taken to levels of blasphemy, claiming your political leaders are handpicked by Jesus Christ. This country is called the United.
How many people have said that? I wonder what the consensus is that that Trump was picked by Jesus Christ. How many Christians believe that? Like I said, I think that Republicans and conservatives really get defined by their crackpots or most zealot. The most zealot people, and usually the zealots are the ones who speak the loudest. There are things that I am very passionate about, so I can speak loud as well. Let's continue.
United States, and we have multiple converging crises that need adult supervision, but we are being distracted trying to get control over a critical mass of you who no longer believe in reality, who've been hypnotized to fear.
Now, by the way, so there are a large group of people that voted for Trump that no longer believe in reality. Now, this is going to continue with what he believes is reality. Let's continue.
Joe Biden presidency, whenever you hear the trigger words, radical socialist, never mind that Biden is backed by America's.
Now, he is not, by the way, Biden is not considered a radical socialist. He's considered a puppet of the socialist. They consider him incompetent. So at least most of the left, most of the right considers Trump a puppet of the socialist. Let's continue.
billionaires whose existence depend on corporate capitalism, so your cognitive dissonance is staggering, but understandable, because the most sophisticated mass media tools ever created have eviscerated your powers of discernment.
Okay, so and like I said, I've heard the speech before, but he's going to continue on certain topics that also seem to he lacks the power of discernment as well. Let's continue.
And there's a gold rush on slinging alternative facts, making millions for opportunists.
Alternative facts. Let's remember that. Continue.
Who've taken you for quite a ride. But you need to wake up now and start the deprogramming.
He wants to deprogram you. He wants you to think differently. Perhaps he does. Does he want you to answer questions? Are questions going to be allowed on this deprogramming? Are we, those of us who believe certain things, are we allowed to question, or should we just go along and do as what he thinks and how he feels? Let's continue.
The election was not stolen. All that proof you kept sharing about suitcases and duffel bags of discarded ballots, it's all been debunked.
All of it? Really? All of it? Everything's been debunked? You might be, you know what? And you might very well be right. I'm not here to, I haven't looked at all the details. I'm going to be honest here. I haven't looked at every bit of the details of this election. So continue.
All the affidavits claiming widespread fraud have been thrown out. Over 60 lawsuits contesting the election in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Republican states. Many of the cases overseen by Republican and Trump-appointed judges. 61 cases tossed out. Trump's hack attorneys are being sued or are under threat of disbarment. That's consistent with the countless criminal prosecutions of many former Trump associates. But the PR stunt worked on the tens of millions of Americans primed for mass hysteria.
I want you to keep in mind the word mass hysteria, and let's continue, because there was mass hysteria on both sides, not one on the Capitol, but there was one on our major cities. Let's continue.
You succumbed to Salem witch trial levels of mental lapse, believing our elections were stolen based on spectral evidence, dreams about krakens, which are make-believe. It's time.
Most people know that krakens are make-believe. It was more of a metaphor, and he should know that. Let's continue.
To wake up now. Black Lives Matter is not a terrorist organization any more than Martin Luther King Jr. was a terrorist.
Okay. So did BLM commit acts of violence and riots? Were riots not associated with the Black Lives Matter protest? Did that not happen? And did Black Lives Matter, people who were associated with Black Lives Matter, not initiate force against Trump supporters and against the Proud Boys? I'm just asking. Let's continue.
Or Gandhi, or Nelson Mandela.
Now, Nelson Mandela was arrested for terrorism, for terrorist activities. He was not nonviolent. Whether you agree with his policy or not, I hope we can be honest and truthful here. Let's continue.
Peaceful protests and strikes and boycotts. That's how a society.
Okay, these were not peaceful. I mean, okay, how many of them were peaceful? How many of them were violent? People have said the protests are the waves and the rioters are the sharks that swim in those waves. Let's continue.
Creates change without violence. Everybody reasonable knows that violence and looting and murder are wrong and counterproductive to a peaceful society.
So there was rioting, looting, and murder. Continue.
That's why everybody reasonable condemns militarized cops executing citizens over cigarettes.
Militarized cops executing citizens over cigarettes. I think he said that. That was Eric Garner. That was that died after being arrested for, I guess they call it selling loose leaf cigarettes. And I believe the company, the store that he was in front of, was the place that called the police on him. And you just have to think about this. Businesses, they pay their taxes and they pay their rent. And then you have somebody who is not a renter and is in front of their store undercutting their business. And evidence shows that this person did not die of a chokehold. He died of a heart attack. I could be wrong on that. But he resisted arrest, and the belief was that he was selling untaxed cigarettes. And like I said, he was undercutting the business that he was in front of, because he was in front of a liquor store who paid taxes and was paying rent. And I guess they're not supposed to do anything when they're obeying the law and the other person is not. So let's continue.
Cell phones, driving, jogging, walking, sleeping, resisting execution.
And this is a belief. Are we allowed to examine the facts on this belief? Are we allowed to speak or talk about what this person's perceptions are? Let's continue.
That's what Black Lives Matter has been protesting. This isn't a partisan issue. It's the largest civil rights movement in the history of the nation.
You know, not only the history of the nation, but this was throughout the world. And they got a hold of the establishment, and any form of criticism, whether it be constructive or not, was completely shut down, at least from my perspective. Let's continue.
You need to wake up now. If you join Black Lives Matter, then all lives will matter. If it helps you
that's an opinion, and can that opinion be? I wonder, can that opinion be challenged? Let's continue.
Understand it better, shut your eyes, say to yourself, my life matters, and Black Lives Matter.
Okay. Is that what you want to do? All right. So just shut your eyes and say that. I mean, is this a demand? And can, like I said, can people, reasonable people, examine the facts? Let's continue.
If we unite, there's hope. We can end the savage practice of imprisoning millions of people for the crime of being Black.
Okay. Is that really happening? Is this the crime of being Black? Is that why Blacks are in prison? Are the Blacks who are in prison? Is this why the majority of them are in prison? Is this the truth? Let's continue.
Or brown, or poor, atoning for. And
is this all people? I mean, what is the percentage of the people who are in jail are just plain victims of society? I'm just curious.
Correcting the mistakes of our ancestors does not mean the next logical step is white genocide. Unless you think the legitimate...
Didn't we, America, correct a lot of their mistakes by their ancestors by the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and there were a couple of other civil rights acts after that? Didn't we correct the legacy of our ancestors then by law? And what more needs to be done? Like I said, is this a discussion or a lecture? Are we allowed, as free-thinking human beings, are we allowed to crosstalk and question this type of thing? It doesn't seem that way, but let's continue.
The purpose of the criminal justice system is to protect white supremacy like it has up until this moment. If that's your underlying premise...
White supremacy. Is white supremacy today, is it codified by law, and does it have popular support? I don't think so. So therefore, I guess white supremacy, does it really exist? I guess they believe that conservatives and Republicans want to revive white supremacy. They want to bring back Jim Crow and all the rest. Let's continue.
You're a racist. That's why you wave a Confederate flag. You just doxed yourself and you need conversion therapy.
What percent of conservatives wave Confederate flags? Like I said, I do know that they're probably the majority of the majority of people who wave Confederate flags probably are Republicans. But is that the majority? Are the majority of Black Lives Matter, are they Marxist? I mean, the leader, one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter said, we are trained Marxists. Should that be considered a threat at all? Does the Cold War mean anything to you? Anyway, let's continue.
Time to wake up. There's no national Antifa network pretending to be fascist Trump supporters who want civil war. Antifa are anti-fascists who only exist right now because there are fascist Trump supporters.
And this one right here is the biggest kind of gaslighting there is. Antifa existed before Trump supporters. Now they might have been more mobilized because of Donald Trump, but they existed long before, and there was a reaction. I mean, these people were beating up and assaulting Trump supporters. And I've said this before, there's often, you'll often see memes of American soldiers getting ready to storm the beaches of Normandy, and they will say, the original Antifa. And the truth is, Antifa has no love for America. They're not waving American flags, they're waving communist flags. And I want to say that many of the people who fought in World War II also fought the communists in the Korean War. I wonder how big of a threat Marxism is and leftism is. Let's continue.
Threatening civil war. Inspired by the official Republican platform, which doesn't have anything in it other than clinical paranoia. Re-educating you to believe there's a conspiracy to seize your guns and gender identity at the same time, so you're so disoriented you can't defend yourself against a mass immigrant invasion threatening your livelihood. Come on. The real danger came from putting...
Now again, there is an argument about immigration and that I'm willing to have with both liberals and conservatives. I'll even say that until 1924, we did not have, I don't think we had active, like people could move freely across the border. There was no border checkpoints and things like that. But we now have a fairly big safety net, which the poor will get on. There's issues on that. And it's something we can examine, but I guess the left right now is going to shut down any discussion. It looks that way. Let's continue.
A recklessly uneducated man with a personality disorder in the White House.
I wonder if this man is a psychologist to identify a man with a personality disorder. And I'm thinking he's stating that Trump has a narcissistic personality disorder, and he's making a diagnosis of him. Let's continue.
Spent his one catastrophic term branding America's democratic cities enemies of the country while taking credit for economic growth rates.
Did these large cities experience large riots? And didn't Portland and parts of Washington or in parts of Seattle, didn't they weren't they taken over by radical leftists? Just a thought. I mean, I heard they had the chop. So let's continue.
He inherited from a Democrat. He and his Republican.
Really? Trump's economy was because of Obama. That is the reason. I wonder how many economists actually think that and believe that. So I don't know who this man is, but he seems to have what he believes a lot of knowledge on economics and liberty and justice and all that stuff. Let's continue.
Republican Senate, under the smokescreen of your disassociation from reality and the brand name Drain the Swamp, filled the cabinet with profiteers like themselves. Billionaires made $1 trillion while they gutted our State Department, our FBI, our CIA, our DHS, our post office. Whatever Trump touched, he wrecked. They attacked our U.S. education system. They tore down.
Now, the U.S. education system, it's interesting. They believe in, the right believes in school choice. And what you'll notice is a lot of the politicians who are against, the Democratic politicians who are against school choice, send their children to the best private schools. This gentleman who's speaking looks like perhaps he went to a very good and prestigious private school. Perhaps if he has children, he sent his children to the best private schools. Let's continue.
Down the minimal regulations that we have protecting America's water and air.
I'd like to see proof on that. Let's continue.
Turned our already abysmal borders into a human rights crisis. They smeared America's top son.
Is being able to cross the border, is that a human right? Just a thought.
Scientists and doctors, our healthcare system, they attacked our entire U.S. media. Their willful incompetence has been so destructive. The USA is the epicenter of the worst pandemic in 100 years.
How did this pandemic start? How did it come about? What made it happen and what made it worse? We should discuss that issue. We should discuss, Trump, how Trump handled it, how China handled it, how the WHO handled it. Can we examine all sides to this? I mean, are we allowed to do that and just have a logical and reasonable discussion with reasonable and logical people? I wonder if we can do that. Let's continue.
Hundreds of thousands of us are dead. Millions are hungry and struggling to survive.
Does China have any part to blame in this? Does the Chinese government have any part to blame in this pandemic? Just a thought.
Survive. And their final act was a massive campaign to try to sabotage the bedrock upon which we stand, American democracy itself.
Is America a democracy or is it a constitutional republic? Let's continue.
This is on you, the Republican Party. The majority of white America elected a man whose business model is lying.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see what he lied about and what he did compared to other presidents, because, of course, politicians are not the most honest people in the world. Let's continue.
Who demands total obedience while swindling and eventually turning on all of his employees and followers after years of abuse. You elected a perfect cult leader. Our enemies are ecstatic. Our allies are horrified because of the suicidal Republican ideology of opposing any limits on gluttony and greed. What was once a beacon of hope all over the world, American democracy, is no longer a given. Your right-wing leaders and shouting heads, they're not going to stop clawing their way down a bottomless pit of excuses to continue profiting off of selling you a virtual alternate reality made up of false accusations and revenge fantasies.
And again, this is something that should be examined. And is there going to be crosstalk? Because I'd love for this gentleman, by the way, to debate Brandon Straka of the walkaway movement. That would be really excellent because, again, these two don't see eye to eye. Let's Let's examine the facts and see where it takes us. Let's continue, please.
Giving you a persecution complex they won't stop feeding, no matter how many of you are driven right off the...
Who's given a persecution complex in this country? Ego victimhood seems to be the rule of the day for many. And this ego victimhood is protected by the establishment. You certainly cannot talk against it. You will be censored. And by the way, there have been waves of censorship on the internet every time an event happens and conservatives are involved. There is a wave of censorship. This actually happened. I mean, there was a whole ad apocalypse thing even before Trump ever got into office. Then there was the Charlottesville incident, which conservatives were blamed. I mean, even though there were conservatives that were in the group that were unhinged. Of course, unhinged lunatics on the left, they certainly get a free pass. If you're not seeing the hypocrisy and the gaslighting, grab some popcorn and just examine the facts and look at the show. Here we go. Let's continue.
Deep end. Any citizen of the United States continuing to fall for it. Some of you thinking of taking up arms against the strongest military power on earth. Others making excuses for these terrorists because you share the same beliefs. You're delusional. You don't have a political party anymore. Come back to reality. January 6th, 2021. That was your come to Jesus moment.
Okay, so we're all going to be cut with the same brush. This is it. Let's continue.
Armed insurgents threatened to hang the vice president, kill the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, basically, those people are crackpots. Let's continue.
They dragged a cop down a flight of stairs and brutally beat another with an American flag. They killed police.
Yes, police were killed. It is bad when police get killed. Reasonable people understand that on both the left and the right. But I don't know how reasonable many on the left are because they absolutely champion their crackpots. At least it seems that way. Let's continue.
Suicidal QAnon follower gave her life trying to break into the House chamber. For what? The most significant terror attack on our country since 9/11.
Really? Is that even, like I said, and there are people who just want to shut it down. I wonder if, anyway, can this be debated? Can this issue be discussed? And what I've noticed, by the way, is leftists on average do not want to debate. They just want to censor. This is the issue. This is the issue why perhaps they are not the biggest threat to the free world or free-thinking people in America, but free-thinking people in the world. That is just a thought. I'm going to continue.
Happened because Republican radicals believe Democrats are Satan-worshiping pedophiles who stole their country.
Okay, and yeah, there are crackpots that believe that. There are, and I'll get into some of the crackpot beliefs on the left. Well, this man just said that black and brown people and poor people are in jail because they are black, brown, or poor. That seems to be a bit of a crackpot theory. Let's continue.
And they'd rather die than lose the protection of their leader. Defending truth and democracy and equality for all people against any tyranny, foreign and domestic, is the only thing that unites us and protects our freedoms. That's why Trump is being held accountable for his crimes. along with every congressperson, every official, every officer who conspired or continues to wage a mass deception campaign to overthrow American democracy, especially under the threat of violence. The First Amendment protects our right to express ourselves without fear of arrest. The right to free speech does not include threats of violence, and it certainly does not grant the authority to force media platforms to broadcast single-party hate propaganda that claim only its members are the real America.
Okay. Again, the left again, does not believe in open conversation. It believes in censorship, and it believes in conformity. And some would say conformity to decency and compassion. Okay, so again, is it decent and compassionate to take away your rights? And I'm gonna wrap this up in a little bow. Let me continue on with this.
For the former Republican Party, who call themselves patriots, this is your wake-up call. Your nightmare of a brainwashed, radical, anti-American movement trying to destroy the country was you.
All right, folks. Well, I don't know how many people are listening because social media has I can't post this on my Facebook page, and I cannot. Mine's again. It continually takes me out of that process. I don't know why. It always for whatever reason is booting me off, and then I didn't go on Twitter and do much of it because Twitter is also I think it might be shadow banning me, and to me shadow banning is akin to fraud, because if you're writing something and you think it's going out to the public and they shadow ban you, that's very fraudulent and very underhanded. But examination of the facts is not really allowed right now. At least it seems that way. And we seem to be talking at one another and not to each other. I'm going to end on this, and I'll say this again. Social media groups seem to have formed online that are violent and that will attack its political opposition. Not all, but many. And nothing happens to them because they are on the left and they are approved by leftists. Many Black Lives Matter supporters have assaulted Trump supporters, people wearing MAGA hats. And Antifa, many of them have also formed online, as well as the Trump supporters as well. They have also formed online. The ones who attacked the Capitol have formed on major social media companies. But it seems like there's only going to be one attack. It also seems like the mainstream media covers for this and only tells you what they want to tell you. And of course, they won't allow debate. One of the things that we want to do on Transparency and Merit is allow for debate and open discussion. Hopefully we can do that with open-minded people. It doesn't seem like we have that anymore. And anyone that can censor you and affect policy is extraordinarily powerful. And yeah, I guess I feel that any social media company that acts the way it does, are they acting nobly and good? Are they promoting the noble and the good? I'm not even saying about selective censorship. Well, that's I kind of am saying about selective censorship. It looks like hypocrisy. It looks like gaslighting. I could be wrong. Anyway, I hope you to leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think. Thank you for listening.